So now those action potentials, they all have the exact same amplitude. They cannot go any higher than plus 30. So it doesn't matter how strong the stimulus. Once the stimulus at least makes it to threshold, every action potential can go no farther than plus 30, because at plus 30 the sodium channel's closed, potassium channel's open, and repolarizes. So how does the brain know that something bigger has happened? How does my brain distinguish between a beetle crawled across my foot, a mouse crawled across my foot, a dog crawled across my foot, or a cow is standing on my foot? How does the brain distinguish from different degrees of stimuli if the action potential can go no higher than plus 30? What do you think?
The amount of sodium?
No, plus 30, this is it.
Oh.
Puzzle on that one. We send them faster. So the beetle galls across my foot, and the brain goes, oh, something minor walked across the foot region. All right, the dog stands on my foot. He's a big boy. You've heard him bark. Those are the signals that my brain gets. And I'm aware that a 110-pound lad is standing on my foot, which my husband pointed out yesterday remains the favorite dog. Number one for the last 25 years is the Labrador. Or at least mine's a dork. All right, or if the cow is standing on my foot, which is, oh my God, there's something big standing on your foot. Okay. And because this is a rural school, one time the students got into a debate about which hurts more, a cow or a horse standing on your foot. Okay, the horse is wearing a shoe which concentrates its weight, but the veterinary, the daughter of the veterinarian said the cow hurts more because when the horse stands on your foot, the horse goes, whoa, sorry. The cow goes, I don't care. It's like,
Probably
okay.
due to breast to your care.
All right, so that makes sense. It's the number of action potentials in an area of time that tells the brain the intensity of the stimuli being received. Since they can't get any higher than plus 30. Well, if we just do them faster, then that tells us that something big is happening. And then, this is what I just told you, local anesthetics work by blocking sodium channels. Cocaine, by the way, was an early anesthetic and remained a local anesthetic, ironically, for nose surgery while I was a nurse. I just find that ironic, given how it's typically used, how it's typically administered by users. Of course, it has fallen out of favor as a local anesthetic because of its potential for abuse, but we still have at least lidocaine. All right, now let's talk about the refractory period. All right, so here we are at resting. There would have been a graded potential that would have brought the membrane up to the threshold of minus 55, at which point all the sodium gates open. The membrane is fully depolarized up to plus 30. Then the sodium gates close, the potassium gates open, potassium leaves, which is repolarizing it. But potassium keeps going and winds up hyperpolarizing the membrane. So during this hyperpolarization time, it takes more stimulus to get that neuron to fire again. It can fire again as soon as the sodium channels are closed. But it takes more of a stimulus. So what this does is it kind of separates out the action potentials to make them distinct, because the brain needs to count the number of action potentials per unit of time to interpret the degree of stimulation that's coming. So this separates them in time. Let's talk about this darker blue. This is called the absolute refractory period. So long as the sodium channels are open, you cannot open them more. So you can't get another stimulus. Can't open more, all of them are already open. We can't get another stimulus. So during this time, it doesn't matter what happens to that neuron. It cannot receive another message until the sodium gates close. And when the sodium gates close and the membrane starts being returned, there is a potential then to throw another impulse. So we could possibly, if it was a stronger impulse, get another action potential right away. Now where I saw that particularly, and this is the heart, but it still applies, heart still action potentials. So here is the EKG. The atria depolarize, the ventricles depolarize, the ventricles repolarize. Notice I'm using the same terminology because it is the same thing. It'll be different ions being moved, but it's the same idea of depolarizing, repolarizing. Now, if a person received a significant, see I have a red in there, if they received a significant electrical shock, right there, when the ventricles are depolarized, the ventricles cannot respond to that new electrical impulse. So you have to be careful about when you grab the wire to make sure that the wire is grabbed during the QRS. But if the wire is grabbed right in here, the ventricles are repolarizing, they can fire again. Only this time, when they fire, everybody fires on their own. And that's what the rhythm looks like, which is a lethal arrhythmia. Blood is not being moved. So in 4 minutes, they're dead. So this explains what happens to the electrical lineman who unfortunately grounds him or herself. If that shock from the electrical wire occurs somewhere other than right here, it may not stop their heart. But if it occurs here, it will stop their heart. Same thing when you are shocking someone, or if you've seen it on TV, but when you're shocking someone, you get the paddles in place, you stand back so you're not leaning on the bed rail. You say clear, you look around, and you make sure nobody is leaning against the bed before you hit the buttons. Because if there's that overeager medical student, oh, they will be on the floor, and we will next be, charge it again, and hit the guy laying on the floor. So you always have to be very mindful before you send that electrical shock. And of course, we'll talk about EKGs later, but this would be the absolute refractory period for the ventricles. And this is the relative refractory period for the ventricles.